There are moments in a courtroom that never make the news. No shouting, no chaos, just a quiet shift in the air, the instant when someone realizes that power has limits. That moment happened on a late afternoon when a woman walked into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom believing the rules were for everyone else. She was confident, calm, almost amused. What she didn't know was that by the time she walked out, she would leave with something far heavier than a sentence. She would leave with humility. The case seemed ordinary at first. A DUI charge, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, the kind of case that passes through courts every day. But the woman standing before the bench was anything but ordinary, at least in her own mind. She was the wife of a foreign ambassador, a regular at high-level diplomatic functions, accustomed to private drivers, private entrances, and private solutions. And as she stood there, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room, it was clear she didn't believe this courtroom applied to her. Judge Frank Caprio noticed it immediately. He has seen thousands of defendants, nervous teenagers, broken men, exhausted mothers, people shaking because they know their mistake could cost them everything. But this woman wasn't shaking. She wasn't apologetic. She wasn't afraid. She looked inconvenienced, as if the court had wasted her time. When her name was called, she stepped forward slowly. No, yes, Your Honor. No acknowledgement of the court, just a quiet sigh that echoed louder than she realized. The prosecutor read the charges, describing how she had been stopped late at night after swerving across lanes, how officers smelled alcohol, how her speech was slurred, how she resisted instructions. The facts were clear, the evidence solid. Judge Caprio looked up and asked a simple question. Ma'am, were you drinking that evening? She smiled. Not nervously, not embarrassed. She smiled as if the question itself was beneath her. Yes, she said. Of course I was. We had a diplomatic event. There it was. Not denial. Not remorse. Just justification. The courtroom shifted. People exchanged glances. A few shook their heads. But she wasn't finished. I don't understand why this is even being discussed, she added. My husband represents his country. The silence that followed was thick. Judge Caprio didn't react immediately. He didn't interrupt her. He let her words sit in the room, because sometimes the most powerful response is patience. He had heard this before, not from diplomats, but from wealthy executives, political insiders, celebrities. Different titles. Same mindset. The belief that status equals immunity. She continued, unaware that every sentence was closing doors rather than opening them. She spoke about how embarrassing the arrest had been, how unnecessary it was, how officers had overreacted. She never once mentioned the danger of drunk driving, never mentioned the lives around her on the road. Only her reputation, her inconvenience, her name. Judge Caprio finally leaned forward. Ma'am, he said calmly, this courtroom doesn't operate on titles. She rolled her eyes. With all due respect, she replied, you don't understand how diplomacy works. That was the moment, the exact second when the tone of the room changed. Not because Judge Caprio was insulted, he had been insulted many times before, but because she had crossed the invisible line between confidence and contempt. Judge Caprio removed his glasses and placed them gently on the bench. You're right, he said quietly. I don't understand diplomacy. I understand responsibility. Her posture stiffened. He continued, still calm, still measured. When someone drives after drinking, they're not just breaking a law. They're making a decision that could end a life. A child's life. A family's life. Someone who doesn't have influence. Someone who doesn't attend fancy dinners. The courtroom was silent. Even she stopped talking. Judge Caprio looked directly at her. Do you know how many people stand where you were standing because someone else believed they were too important to follow the rules? She didn't answer. He wasn't angry. He wasn't loud. And that made it worse. Because disappointment carries more weight than rage. He reviewed her record. No prior convictions. No injuries caused. A clean history, on paper. But courtrooms don't judge paper alone. They judge people. You came in here today expecting this to go away, he said. You expected your name to protect you. Her eyes dropped slightly for the first time. But let me tell you something, he continued. The law doesn't care who your husband is. The law cares about what you did. Judge Caprio explained the reality of drunk driving. Not with statistics, but with stories. Cases he had seen. Mothers who never made it home. Teenagers hit by drivers who thought they were fine to drive. Families destroyed by one night of arrogance. His voice never rose, but every word landed. For someone who represents a country, he said, you showed very little respect for the people in this one. That sentence hit her harder than any fine ever could. When it came time for judgment, the room held its breath. Would he make an example of her? Would he be harsh? Would he show mercy? Judge Caprio did both, but not in the way she expected. He imposed the standard penalties. The fine, the license suspension, mandatory alcohol education. No shortcuts, no diplomatic favors, no special treatment. Exactly what any other defendant would face. But then he paused. Before I conclude, he said, there's something else. He looked at her carefully. You disrespected this court today, not by what you did outside, but by how you acted inside. Her eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind that come when defenses finally crack. I want you to understand something, Judge Caprio said. This courtroom exists for everyone, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. And the only thing that earns respect here is accountability. He leaned forward slightly. You owe this court an apology. She swallowed hard. And not to me, he added. To the people who follow the law every day without privilege. Her voice shook when she spoke. I'm sorry, she said. I was wrong. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. That apology matters, he said. More than the money. He struck the gavel. As she walked out of the courtroom, she looked different. Smaller. Quieter. The confidence that walked in had been replaced by something real. Something earned. Something humbling. And the people in the courtroom understood why Judge Frank Caprio is respected across the country. Because justice, in his courtroom, isn't about punishment alone. It's about perspective. It's about reminding people that power without responsibility is meaningless. That day, a woman learned that no passport can outrun accountability. No title can silence truth. And no amount of influence can outweigh a simple fact. When you put lives at risk, you answer to the law. In Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, everyone is equal. And everyone learns the same lesson. Respect is not given. It is earned.